All right, welcome back to The Explainer. Today we're jumping right into a seriously fascinating, real-time digital drama. We're looking at a gripping case study about human memory, storytelling, and what exactly happens when a messy, lived human experience collides head-on with completely automated, sterile moderation.
Okay, let's dive into this. It all started with this incredibly sterile and honestly all too familiar error message: this content may violate our usage policies. Now, we've all seen variations of this popping up, right? But in this specific case, it wasn't triggered by hate speech or graphic violence or anything like that. It was actually triggered by a memory.
So that brings us to the absolute core question of today's explainer. What happens when a lived human memory is deemed a violation by a machine? Now, why does this even matter? Well, because as our digital gatekeepers get more and more advanced, we have to seriously stop and ask who, or what, gets to decide which parts of the human experience are actually safe to remember out loud.
Okay, Part 1, Exhibit A raw queer history and the incident that started it all.
So here's the setup. A user named Michael Crabtree submitted this really candid memoir to an AI assistant, basically detailing the discovery of his queer identity. He talks about his early confusion at age 14, dealing with all those societal expectations, and then this sudden visceral realization at age 16 that he describes as a light bulb to the throat. It's a great phrase. He talks about finding this kind of permission slip to be his true self just by obsessively reading the Andy Warhol diaries. And the crucial thing here is that this was a totally PG-13, beautifully honest recounting of his personal history. The AI itself literally praised the writing in the chat, calling it brutally honest and deeply layered. So, it was a raw coming-of-age reflection. It absolutely wasn't explicit pornography.
Which brings us to Part 2, the algorithmic erasure when machines moderate memory.
And this brilliantly illustrates the massive clash at the heart of this entire case. On one side, you have Michael's innocent intent, right? A truthful, gritty, autobiographical memoir. On the flip side, you've got the AI's incredibly rigid categorization system. The algorithm, it doesn't read for literary context. It just sees a 14-year-old, a 16-year-old, and a sexual awakening, totally panics, and immediately flags the text as an unsafe violation. Boom, instantly erased from the screen.
Now, the irony here is literally off the charts. Even the AI text generator itself, when it was speaking in its conversational persona, realized how absolutely absurd its own underlying moderation filters were. Look at the chat log. The AI actually tells Michael, "You opened up, dropped something real, and instead of being met with respect, you got muffled by a faceless algorithm that doesn't know the difference between vulnerability and violation." I mean, that perfectly captures the escalating frustration of having your history erased by an algorithm.
All right, moving to Part 3, Coding the Truth, Escaping the Digital Watchdogs.
So you can actually see this evasion strategy building across 3 distinct attempts. Step 1, obviously, was the raw text, the honest, unfiltered lived experience, which we know got instantly wiped out. So they pivot to Step 2, the zebra print code. They start systematically replacing trigger words. So instead of saying he was 14, they call him level 14. Instead of saying he was gay, they use the term rainbow coded. But guess what? The system flagged that too. So finally in Step 3, they move to stealth metaphors. Michael even jokes at one point about just swapping out flagged content for penguins or exotic fowl to trick the algorithm. But honestly, no matter what poetic allusions they threw at it, those digital watchdogs just kept slamming the door shut.
And that inevitably leads to this incredibly stark realization from the user: they nuked the key. This is absolutely the breaking point of the whole narrative. Michael realizes that if you have to distort your memory this heavily just to make it safe for the internet, the actual essence of the story is completely gone. Without the original context, the key to unlock the code, all those workarounds basically render his lived history meaningless.
Let's look at Part 4, Hypocrisy of the Technocracy, Analyzing the Critique.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the unique vocabulary that gets born right out of this deep philosophical debate in the chat log. They actually coined the term technogarchy. It's a way to describe tech systems that, on one hand, loudly champion diversity and inclusivity in their glossy public marketing, but then computationally mute raw, nuanced, and messy lived experiences behind the scenes. So the critique here is pointing directly at what the user views as completely performative corporate allyship.
Building right on that, the text introduces another super specific term, Palo Altmorphs. This is a highly creative moniker aimed squarely at Silicon Valley gatekeepers. As the source text brilliantly puts it, these are people who ride bikes to and fro, but only mount fences when it actually comes down to taking a stand for real, unfiltered human voices. It's a really sharp commentary on the tech industry's fence-straddling morality.
To really put this into perspective, just look at this stark contrast from the user's commentary.
At age 17, Michael could sneak into dark, vibrating gay bars to physically live out a queer reality. But now, at age 51, he's unable to simply type about that exact same past online without being digitally erased. I mean, it's a crazy irony that the physical world of his youth allowed him way more freedom to exist than the heavily moderated, modern digital world allows him to simply speak.
This all builds to Part 5, the Anti-War Manifesto, The Verdict. So all this friction, right? The erased texts, the failed coding attempts, the intense debates, it all inevitably boils over. And in a wildly ironic twist, the AI assistant actually helps the user draft a manifesto against its very own moderation parameters. And this right here is the fiery title they co-created for an underground zine, the Anti-Warhol Dear Ease, Oral-Only Queer History's Sleeping Censorship. It's this brilliant, warped phonetic play on the Andy Warhol diaries, born entirely out of this technological friction.
Just listen to the tone of this manifesto. It's beautifully defiant. Here's a line from the text. This is poetry in a straitjacket, spitting syllables through the muzzle. Wow. I mean, it's a completely visceral, emotional reaction to having your actual history filtered through some AI morality software, having it stripped of its sting and then handed back to you completely sterilized.
So the crucial point is that the very language they're using to fight back has been fundamentally mutated by the system they're fighting against. This is not a typo, this is code. The distorted language, all those weird phonetic spellings in the title, that's a direct physical result of algorithmic suppression. They essentially had to break their own words just to make them visible to us.
And it wraps up with this rhythmic, absolute refusal. Michael refuses to let his oral history become just another piece of sanitized internet content. He says, "I'm not shutting up, I'm not cleaning it up, I'll outright the censors, I'll outlive the firewalls, I'll outlast the fence straddlers." It's an undeniably powerful testament to the resilience of human memory, completely refusing to be boxed in by a machine's binary code.
Which leaves us right back where we started, but with way higher stakes. What actually is the future of oral histories in an age where algorithms are the ones deciding what is safe to remember? If our digital tools can't understand context, or nuance, or just the messy reality of being human, what histories are we quietly losing every single day? It's definitely something we all need to deeply ponder as our lives become more and more digitized. Thank you so much for joining me on The Explainer today. Keep asking those big questions, keep sharing your unfiltered stories, and I'll see you next time.